There's 104 days of summer vacation, and school comes along just to end it. So the annual problem for our generation is finding a good way to spend it. Like maybe
falling down a rabbit hole of above-average, fondly remembered puzzle games from the year 2000 to 2001. This summer has been rather surreal for me. I went to Utah to have the pleasure of visiting my extended family. One of my uncles had a car he wasn't using anymore and wanted to sell. I just got my learner's permit. I'm $300 in debt. When I was in Utah, another uncle of mine had a copy of Plants vs. Zombies on the Xbox 360. I thought, oh, that's kind of cool, until I realized that unlike every other version of PvZ, it had trees. I didn't know what day of the week it was unless Alpharad Gold uploaded a putt-putt video. Then, they ran out of putt-putt videos and things got kind of weird.
It sucks that, like, I could just do it. I miss the person who wanted to do things.
Nearing the end of my 2021 to 2022 year, the computer science teacher just got so fed up with us he stopped caring because we kept on doing projects or like physical NFTs. So I downloaded Bookworm Adventures on one of the computers, and half the class would huddle around trying to get the best words, and the other half would play a Roblox world domination game. Originally, I was planning for a big analysis of how video games tackle the contradictory nature of the setting they're placed in, but after 9,000 words, I gave up because I found out about this horse, and I need to tell you about it. PopCap was founded in the year 2000 under the original name Sexy Action Cool, which was a movie poster tagline in one of the guys' basements. Their first game was called Foxy Poker, and I'm sure you can assume the subject matter. It was strip poker. I don't know why I specified that. You can see it on screen, sort of. The game is mostly lost to time. The only footage of it existing is this 49-second clip that Jason Kapalka played in his Bejeweled Retrospective GDC talk. And they felt that a pornography game would be the best way to get a steady revenue stream before they worked on stuff they cared about. It makes sense that in most of the interviews I watched, they don't really like to acknowledge this very much because apparently it also got them in trouble with the US border.
As a Canadian, I also had a work visa that said I worked for an internet company called Sexy Action Cool. So I've had some troubles with the US border guards over the years, and they definitely, I got a few extra questions, I think, at the border due to that.
Also, another fun fact is that some of the developers were apparently really prudish, so there isn't actually any nudity in the game.
The character there never actually becomes fully nude. She ends up in a state, sort of like an Austin Power movie, where there's always a bunch of objects sort of obscuring anything that might be naughty.
After that whole affair, they kind of dedicated themselves to being a family-friendly company in the family sense and not the 10-year-old boy sense, because they thought that it was messed up that most games were made for the 18 to 35 college dude bro market. They did need a revenue stream though, but luckily their next game would fill that need pretty well. Game 2, Bejeweled. Here's the story. One of the three founders, Jason Kapalka, walked in and said, "Hey guys, check out this cool Flash game." It wasn't a Flash game. Flash didn't exist back then. Check out this cool browser game based off the old Russian game Shariki, where you put the three things in a row and then the more stuff fall down. Wow, that's pretty cool. They then decided to make their own iteration of this formula and quickly came out with the new game Diamond Mine. They made money by selling it to other digital platform storefronts, but eventually Microsoft gave them some kind of money and wanted to differentiate it. So they asked them to name it Bejeweled. Jason Kapalka did not like that name. It was still hosted online, but the way they made money was by giving people a limited chunk of the game or by letting them only play it for a set amount of time and then directing them to the deluxe edition, the downloadable version, on their own website for some money. You might expect this to be an issue back in 2001 when bandwidth wasn't exactly the standard, but the game is smaller on my hard drive than this file, labeled LV_0_20220518152638. Bejeweled was, of course, more or less the first iteration of the Match 3 genre. There was the Russian game Shariki, which no one remembers at all. There was the browser game, which is so forgotten that the developers forgot what it's called, and no one has been able to find it in the last 22 years. Bejeweled follows the exact same gameplay loop you've seen in every other Match 3 game, including its sequels, but is significantly more stripped down. Matching 4 gems doesn't give you an explosion or anything, it just gives you more points. And there isn't any AI to make sure that you don't just lose from random chance, so you die pretty fast. It's not very exciting. So they made a timed mode that most players didn't play because they didn't know it existed. Here I have the Flash version of the original Bejeweled. Would you know to click the left button there if you were 50 years old on Facebook? Another reason you never played is because Bejeweled fills the role of a time waster, and that's kind of what casual games are. No one really wanted an actual video game, so I'm sure they'll never make an actual video game out of it. Overall, it is a wholly unremarkable game with a remarkable game concept that would be the driving force of this wonderful studio for years to come. Now, let's see what they did next. Game 3, Alchemy. Sucks. I love this excerpt from the game's page on the PopCap wiki. The game appears to be set in medieval times due to it having gold, and a wizard is there.
In fairness, this game does still clearly hold a special place in the hearts of the PopCap developers, as it would be referenced in many later games.
Game 4, 7 Seas. This is literally all the information about it available on the PopCap wiki. The source that Wikipedia cites for its existence is this 2003 book about the internet that is $5. I would love to purchase it, but unfortunately, however, I did have enough money for a functioning internet connection, which was enough to give me access to the 2 terabyte archive of almost every web browser game ever made, funded by the good people at Flashpoint. There, I found that it is... Oh no, oh no. And there, I found that it actually does exist. It's a turn-based ship simulator where your most reliable tool is to bait enemy pirates into ramming headfirst into islands. It then inexplicably plays the stock footage explosion effect that is basically exclusively used in meme culture today as shorthand for cheap laziness. So I don't know how to feel about it being used in this 2001 game. Nothing else to say, really. Game 5, Insaniquarium. I have a physical copy of this that I found at the thrift store for $2. 128 megabytes of RAM? Insaniquarium shows us a lot about the game company's ethos going forward, given it shares a lot of its mechanics with other games by the studio. There's a level system where each time you finish a level, you get a new thing to bring to the next level, and I guess that's not a very unique thing, but given its creator and its history, it seems a bit familiar, just a little bit. The way you win each level is by purchasing the 3 egg pieces, each equally priced, so the actual goal of the game is just to win lots of money. It's not very hard to do that because every fish somehow just gives you money. The only obstacles in the game are your fish dying of hunger, which just turn on an auto clicker, and these alien guys that you'll never guess which. The game is actually kind of uninteresting until World 3 or so, at which point the game just becomes overstimulation to the highest extent. Insaniquarium was a wonderful demo for what the company would do next. It was mostly created by a certain George Fan, who has a GDC talk about his later works, and in it he describes how this game had a special messaging system for tutorials, which is really boring. But that's mainly because he only talks about one fish, the carnivore. Oh, God. Funnier if you mentioned the one fish in this game called the Hypervore. The Hypervore is this fish's name. So that's the end of year 1 of PopCap's existence. They got quite a lot done in that short span of time, and I figure now is the perfect time to talk about the founding of this company that exists. John Beachy and Brian... I know nothing about Brian. He went completely silent after everything happened. John Beachy and Brian were both students at an Indiana college, and they were like, what if we made a Flash game? So they made a Flash game which has been described as top-down Counter-Strike. Jason Kapalka was a rich guy in California and said, hey, that's a good Flash game. What if you came and made a company about that? Wouldn't that be crazy? No, never mind. It probably would be profitable. Just kidding. Unless. Then they founded a company in Seattle and made Bejeweled. Good for them. Game 6, Dynamite. Puzzle Bobble, but with dinosaurs. and no colorblind mode. I did not have a good time with this one. Game 7, Big Money. This is the first time I'm going to mention Grapefruit in the video, and will definitely not be the last because he's the only guy who seems to know what PopCap is. Grapefruit played this one with an auto clicker, so I don't think it warrants much more examination other than the fact that it was a Webkinz minigame called Cash Cow.
If somebody tells me that they've been working hard lately, though, I know for a fact they are broke as fuck.
You remember Webkinz? I don't. I was born in 2008. Games 8 through 12. We don't know anything about these games. PopCap's website shut down either 2014 or 2016, and the Wayback Machine doesn't help us with any information about these games. The only evidence they ever existed is this Wikipedia article which cites this book, which I can't read, but they were all on the Flashpoint archive, so that's crazy, right? We can see them. We don't know when they came out, but we know that they existed at some point in time. The first game on the list is Atomica, a forgettable puzzle game where you drag tiles across a map to meet each other. That's about it. Game 9 is Noah's Ark.
This is a nothing game. I am having to think like slightly more now, but it's still not what I would call a compelling puzzle, is all. Oh, what a miserable game.
Game 10 is Mummy's Maze, a game where you have to escape a maze while being chased by a mummy. But the gimmick is that the mummy was intentionally programmed to not have any AI. So you just bait him into walls. It's kind of cool. Game 11 is called Tip Top. It's a match 3 game that is asymmetrical, sort of. If you don't know what those words mean, no one does. Although this one can also be played with an auto clicker. Game 12. Ningpo Mahjong. It's a pretty basic Mahjong game. I don't know how to play Mahjong. That's it for 2002. It was lame as fuck. 2003, Game 13, Typer Shark. A very basic typing game. You can probably find these on typing.com or whatever. But I did play this one on Expert, so. Game 14, Bookworm. But not the good one. This is an endless puzzle game where you match words from adjacent tiles, not a randomly selected collection, which means it's way harder to make words because they have to be consecutive. This makes it much more luck dependent than any other word game, and it sucks. There's like nothing charming here. Later Bookworm games would have not this. Look at this thing. It's green and worm-shaped and oozing. It burps when you eat too many words. I hate it. Get it out of here. He sweats so much. Just an unpleasant experience all around. Game 15, Rocket Mania. It's the hacking minigame from Bioshock, but did come out 4 years earlier though. Game 16, Zuma. Zuma was the first really big hit after Bejeweled. It wasn't good. I did not like playing it. I think it's probably just because I'm colorblind and I was playing this initially on the Xbox 360. Both of those combined mean that no. I'm half convinced that most of the people playing this game are just doing it because of nostalgia. It is 5 years older than me, so I can't really comment on how palatable it was to 2003 audiences. But I can't imagine it did. Like, it's a casual game because it's from PopCap and look at the gameplay style. But it also has an adventure mode, which is indistinguishable from the regular mode, except that you have lives now. It's just really boring to talk about and to play. The adventure mode is more or less indistinguishable from itself, as it were.
Also, it is by far PopCap's most controversial game because it's basically just stolen.
It was called Puzzloop, and here's how it played. You controlled the central character. You could spin them around to point in whichever direction you wanted. And surrounding this character was a sort of spiralling path which got closer and closer to your own position. In August 2003, a little game called Zuma was released. It might look familiar to you. You can imagine how Roy Ozaki and the team at Mitchell Corp reacted. However, by 2006, things hadn't progressed. Roy explained in an interview, "My lawyers in Japan are supposed to be on this. Progress is slow because if we do court battle in US, we would be at a disadvantage. In essence, they don't give a shit. I think they knew what they were doing from the start, and they are bad businessmen.
Next kind of hit game that PopCap had, Alchemy was always did well, but it was not in the same tier. The next one was Zuma, a few years after that.
And do you remember where that game came from?
Yeah, there was this game called Puzzloop, which was this Japanese game, and we didn't even think the company was like around at all. And so we're like, well, they had some, I think, some game design issues in Puzzloop for sure. Like things that like it was just kind of one track, and it got frustrating towards the end of every round. They didn't have extra like there's things that like I feel like we added a lot to it. Like we made different courses. We had the mechanic where you push the balls back. Things that make Zuma very Zuma were all things that we kind of added to that core mechanic. But Puzzloop was there, and eventually they were like, we got some like years later. There was a lot of frustration, and I felt kind of bad about that because we thought they were defunct. Because the only way you could find it was on like emulator things.
Do you think like, oh, is that kind of weird that we just took that design versus like, well, we iterated on it in so many smart ways that I don't have any mixed feelings about the origins here?
I guess it gets into some of those ideas of cloning versus inspiration and so forth. I don't know. I mean, we've been, PopCap Games have been cloned various times, of course, and again, we've certainly borrowed ideas from other places for things. I kind of eventually, I guess, I came to feel that that's the sort of the natural way that games evolve, and as long as I feel okay about it, whether it's our game or someone else doing something with one of our games, as long as they're adding something new or trying something different.
Game 17, Feeding Frenzy, with such high accommodations as 17th most popular game on Microsoft's very limited digital storefront in the specific year that it came out. It's literally just Agario, but without the multiplayer aspect, which makes sense. It's 2003, but I think it's just another game that we add to the list of games PopCap made that were not good, but were stolen by other people who made it good by implementing their own ideas, which makes sense given that that's how PopCap started. Astropop is an RTS strategy game. Its Wikipedia article has a disambiguation page, not to be confused with Astropop, the cocktail. From what I can gather, it's just vodka and any flavor of syrup. There is absolutely no consensus on how to make this, and I'm 15. I don't know anything about alcohol other than Mountain Dew Baja Blast. We'll get back to it, but the fact that the most interesting thing about this game is its title is not bode well.
Oh my god! Yo, it's the big money guy! Yo, what the fuck? His boss is the big money guy in space! What is this insane lore? Hot. I'm just gonna say it.
Game 19, Pixelus. Game 20, Bejeweled 2. This was the sequel to Bejeweled and had a ton of new things to make it good. There's a ton of new modes to make it actually fun, and yet most of the modes are indistinguishable or about the same as Classic. Those were synonyms. Also, none of them are interesting or more fun than Classic. There's Endless, which scholars have researched for years and have concluded is the same thing. There's Action with a timer, and there's the biggest addition, Puzzle. Puzzle forces people to use their brain and, solve puzzles, but I'm playing casual games to specifically avoid doing this one thing. The likely reason they included this was to facilitate the new features such as power gems, which were introduced in this game and stolen by every other Match 3 game ever made. Also, after you finish all the puzzles, this happens. There are a few secret modes, which I have not unlocked because the requirements are ridiculous. To unlock Infinity mode, you have to play Endless until level 280. The PlayStation versions, unsurprisingly, lowered this to level 20 or something. I don't know. Also, it had a ton of crossover advertisements with other brands where the gems were replaced by brand things. This was also the case for Bejeweled Classic, but I did not want to mention that because I want to use this Grapefruit clip real bad.
I didn't even realize when that happened the first time that it like showed a brand name. Yes! Oh my god, I want to go buy like 6 bags of kitty litter right now. I don't even have a cat.
Year 2005. PopCap Dublin has just been formed and will mostly be responsible for mobile ports of Bejeweled 2, etc. Game 21. Cosmic Bugs. Maybe. Wikipedia doesn't cite a source for its existence, and it isn't on the PopCap wiki. It is on the Real Arcadepedia wiki, which was like some service that would distribute games, and I don't know anything about it. That wiki says that it initially came out in 2004, but was published on PopCap's website in 2007. Also, both of the titles that it gives aren't available on Flashpoint. However, the demo is available on archive.org, which says the files from 2005. I finally understand what teachers mean when they say Wikipedia can't be trusted. They got one obscure fact wrong about a meaningless casual game from 2005. Maybe. Again, not sure about that part. The gameplay is pretty simple. Just click the divided area. The smaller side of the divided area will be filled up. Get it to 85%. It's really bad. The enemies will kill you if they touch your rope. So, what a in-depth game system. I sure do hope they make a sequel. Game 22, Pizza Frenzy. This one is much less interesting on the archival side, but much more interesting on everything else, because it's one of the only games that EA felt satisfied enough to keep up and archived on Steam. Oh my gosh, this is the first game to have cutscenes and a story since Insane Aquarium, maybe. This is almost an actually good video game. What do you mean it's over? I thought we were going to do some cool routing and like find the best way to deliver the pizza as fast as possible. You just click the guy and then the restaurant and then the other guy again a few seconds later. From what I can tell, the game has some interesting mechanics later and not when you play the game. There are more than 2 toppings, and there's a criminal who you have to report to the police for making prank calls. What a terrifying criminal. I guess it makes sense that this game is propaganda because it's really racist towards Italians. There's also a Simon Says minigame and a memory game. Matt, Pat, you gotta get on this. What's the difference here? Game 23, Heavy Weapon. This game is what 7 Seas directed to after it went down. PopCap was like, wow, no one's playing 7 Seas. If they want to play a game on a website, let's be like, hey, this one's gone. Play this one instead. This would be interesting if Heavy Weapon was anything at all like 7 Seas. 7 Seas is a turn-based puzzle game. This is a Gradius-style side-scroller shmup. It's a fine enough Flash game, but I don't know who would buy it on Xbox Live Arcade.
Also,
1984, Russia launches a global invasion.
we must negotiate a surrender.
I've heard enough liberal nonsense.
I think we've got to get to a different world, one where wealth doesn't exist. And so when I think about that, it's not just like, well, how can I give back? How can I, like the Bill Gates, right? Talking about like climate change, flying around in private planes. Like that's bullshit. He shouldn't be as powerful as more than half the nations in the country because of how much wealth he has with the Gates Foundation.
Game 24, Chuzzle. It's a match 3 game. There was an ad for it in Japan when it came out on phones. That was kind of funny. – 2006. Maybe. Game 25, Word Harmony. Wikipedia says that it was released in 2006, with absolutely no source to back this up. So, I did a little digging. Turns out the demo of the game is on Abandonware, where it says that it was initially released in 2003 worldwide. Then, it got its worldwide release in 2006. Wait, the gameplay is a pretty basic word game. You get new letters every couple of seconds, but every time you do, the water level rises. So you have to string words together to lower the water level. It's pretty poorly programmed though, as there's no system in place to make sure you can match a word. Like, it will be like 10 letters before you have a single vowel. Another interesting thing is the linked letters, which you have to use together in a sentence. I mean, they might be interesting. They look kind of interesting, but the game crashed before I could use them. Rest in peace to a real one. Game 26, Igglepop. Igglepop was released in 2004 on Windows and 2006 on Mac. Despite this, it says that its release was in 2006 on Wikipedia. I trust Wikipedia more than whatever this website is, so it's going in the 2006 section. Igglepop is like Pac-Man on steroids.
A little treat. Virtual Bird Song. This is the worst fucking game ever.
There are so many more mechanics. You've got to grab these things and take them to other spots on the map. If you have enough of these Iggles, you can go on certain squares that spawn tons of points, and all the while you're avoiding ghosts. That's it. I really wish I had more to say, but I have enough to say to the point where I can't put in another rant about the gay furry visual novel without being awkward. Sorry. Game 27, Bonnie's Bookstore. Wikipedia says that it came out in 2006, but doesn't cite a source. Maybe the source is on the game's Wikipedia article. Let's check the game's Wikipedia article from the Wikipedia list. I'm going insane. This game is unnerving. Look at it. Look at her dull, soulless eyes, her disproportionately large hands, her name. I was going to put a jump scare here, but that would be kind of mean. So I'm just going to put this GIF instead. Are you amused by the funny GIF? The game is incredibly similar to Bookworm from 2003, except let's zoom in on those tiles there. You see that? I didn't. I'm severely colorblind, but we can crank up the contrast and see what's happening here. Some tiles are different colors than other tiles. I don't know what these colors are, but they're there. So you've got to make all of the uncolored tiles the colored tiles, and then the level is done. But again, it's really poorly programmed. The only system in place checks to make sure that there are matches, not matches that can help you. So if you just get rid of all the vowels on the bottom row, you're done. Sorry. Well, I do believe this game is so similar to Bookworm because something else was going to happen around the same time this game was released. Something that would change the face of word games forever. It is with my great pleasure that I announce Game 28, Feeding Frenzy 2, Shipwreck Throwdown. There's nothing interesting about this game. It was bundled with the PS3 version of Bejeweled 3. The Wikipedia page has a reception section with no text. Usually there would be a reception box with the scores on the right side of the page next to the blurb. I don't know what it's called, but it would be right there, and there would be text describing the reception, but this Wikipedia author did not think that that was necessary. So it's just the box on the right side, but the blurb is bigger than the reception text. So the reception looks like radio silence until you glance over at the right side of the page, and it has a list of all the reception this game received. And it was terrible. I guess no one had anything to say about the game. Just like me. Game 29, Hammerheads. A pretty basic whack-a-mole game on mobile and PC. Sometimes you hit the guys with a hammer, sometimes they take 2 hits, sometimes they drop coins to distract you, and sometimes they drop hearts for when you miss. Nothing interesting to say except that this is the first time I've seen a Steam page that has glitched in a way that doesn't let me buy the game. There isn't even a price tag attached. I don't know how it has a store page if I can't buy it from the store, but looking in the reviews, other people can play it. For instance, this absolute legend has 36 hours in this whack-a-mole game. Gotta show respect to the troops. Game 30, Talismania. I sure hope that this is a brand new game with a new game concept that no one has ever tried before. Oh, you motherfucker. Game 31, Bookworm Adventures. This was the game I was talking about at the end of Bonnie's Bookstore section. I'm trying to go in like release order. Sorry about that. Bookworm Adventures is the best word game. It's the best one. I don't know what else to say other than this game is so charming, man. Like, starting with the title screen, we have the purest vibe that simply cannot be replicated by anything other than the most Tumblr-ish of Tumblr girls. What am I saying? First of all, Lex the Bookworm's redesign. So much cuter. Now, he's an abstract green blob rather than a wrinkly, oozing mess. His glasses have been noticeably sized up, giving him a much more expressive appearance. And he's incredibly animated, moving around across the screen. On the rare occasions he is talking, it's in text boxes with stills instead of ugly flash mouth. Then the gameplay, man. Oh, dude, look at it. All right, you've got Scrabble, but with power-ups. So depending on how well you do, more power-ups appear. So it's possible to start spawning super tiles if you get big enough words, and then you can use those to deal even more damage, so you just go cruising on long streaks. Or if you're not good at words, like me, you can just like get a 3 to 4 letter word, then it's a tense turn-based combat system. You're still going to get amethyst tiles and fire tiles, even if you don't have the biggest words, so you can poison the enemies or light them on fire with short words before using like a really big word that you have saved up. Although, keep in mind, your attacks are not graded on how many letters there are, they're Scrabble rules, so vowels are worth much less in a word than not vowels consonants. I'm not good at words, you can see that. I'm not very good at bookworm division. Then there are the artifacts, which give passive buffs to Lex. The first artifact, the Bow of Zix, lets you do more damage if you use more rare letters. So you're going to be pressing Z, Y, and X. You're going to find a single word with X, like a single one. Please. The Golden Fleece gives the player another heart, but you can replace it with other combat artifacts. It's like an actual RPG where you can invest in attack or defense if you think you're strong enough to just do more damage and not let them get any hits on you. And then there's the shield, which is, it's just like really boring armor. So that one is less fun to talk about though. The shield's effects are kind of boring, but they help reinforce the theme and the vibe of the game. That being mythology. There's 3 worlds, the first being Greek mythology in some nebulous form, the second is Arabian Nights, and the third is the Lexicomicon, possibly inspired by the Necronomicon. Maybe. It's 2 a.m. as I was writing this. I'm recording this after the blankets on the ceiling fell down for like the 4th time. I hope that's not in the video. My favorite part of the game is the final boss. It's a plot twist. Always gotta love one of those, but even when you win, the villain gets the upper hand on you, and he's like, any last words, you gullible grub? Then Lex, like, breaks the game and spells Hippopotamonstrosis Quipedalion. Just the one. Alright, the definition of this final word. Of or pertaining to incredibly long words. It's not even that good of a joke, I just think it's cute. This game took $700,000 to make, 7 times the studio's previous record, and it was worth it because of just how transcendentally good it is. After it came out on PopCap Store in 2006, it was put on Steam in 2007. But, unfortunately, after events happened that we will be talking about later, it was taken down. The reason? It was unprofitable. Due to the fact it costs $0 to sell a game on Steam, they felt that it was too expensive to have these servers that make sure the game isn't a pirated copy. Instead of just updating the game to be DRM free, they took it off the store, which kind of sucks. It sucks that there's no way to play this beloved childhood game. I loved it so much. It's so sad that there is no way to play this game anymore.
Holy shit, dude. Holy shit. Holy shit.
2007. Something interesting happened this year. Finally, PopCap purchased SpinTop Games, a very small developer with similar background to PopCap, in that it was just a few guys who wanted to make a casual game. And the thing that PopCap did was nothing. They didn't fire anyone, they didn't dock anyone's pay, they didn't do anything, they just let the people make the games they were going to make already at the same time, but being published by PopCap, which is just so nice. It's just nice that they let people make games. I like games, and they let them make them. Although, unfortunately, the games that SpinTop makes are so viscerally boring. I want to stop looking at them now. Game 32, Water Bugs. I can't find it on Steam, Abandonware, the Internet Archive, or Flashpoint. Those are the only 4 places I checked, but just kidding, it is available. I was foolishly looking up Water Bugs, parentheses 2007, because Wikipedia said it came out in 2007. No, the game came out in 2005. It's going in the 2007 section. F you. The gameplay is identical to its predecessor, Cosmic Bugs, which I've already covered and said wasn't good. You probably already forgot because of how boring it was. The introduction to this game reads, "Oh no, the cosmic bugs have crashed into our planet. Welcome to Water Bugs, the sequel to the hit game Cosmic bugs. When you tell the players that your game was a hit, instead of letting them figure it out yourself, it probably wasn't. Game 33. What is there to say about Peggle, man? This game is absolutely ridiculous and perfectly encapsulates. Alexa, play Me and the Birds by Duster. Alright, that's filming and probably in the correct position. I'm leaving that one. You can't stop me from leaving that one. That's never going up again. What is there to say about Peggle? This game is absolutely ridiculous, man, and it perfectly encapsulates everything I love about the studio. Let's start with its creation trajectory because it is rather interesting. It all starts when Sukhbir Sidhu, sorry for pronouncing that wrong, joined PopCap in 2002 and had an idea. What if we made a pachinko game? That won't work, bro. The fun part of pachinko is gambling, and we can't make a game based on gambling. Not until 2014 at least. Ah, shoot, you're right, yeah man. So they ignored it until 2005 when they said, but dude, how great would that be though? Then they got to work on prototypes. But the interesting thing about these prototypes is that all of them were bad. Some were pachinko, some were pinball, some were apparently just breakout, which I would have loved to see. But as it is, we only have one prototype available to the public, as opposed to the 300 that allegedly exist from this Jason Kapalka interview. This prototype was, of course, the build on August 3rd, 2006, Peggo. The game was called Peggo. That was what the game was called. They changed their mind because they didn't want to get in trouble with Fogo, which was, of all things, an EA company.
Foreshadowing is a narrative device in which suggestions or warnings about events to come are dropped or planted.
The pre-release version of Peggo has a lot of interesting things to find, and I'm just going to rant about those if you don't mind. Like most games, it has a README file, except that this one isn't a README file. It wasn't finished by this time, so they just used Zumas. That was very jarring to see. There was another program in the bundle that is a screensaver, but it's completely broken. Unfortunately, it has a loading screen that fills up a map with pegs and the default pose of a random character before crashing, before I can even save my screen, man. It needs saving. Look at it. I've never used a screensaver. Also, its icon is the Instant Aquarium icon for reasons beyond my human comprehension. We can actually browse the files in this one. They aren't encrypted. Actually, the Steam ones might not be encrypted, but I don't want to check. And here we have all the character sprites. During gameplay, the characters are facing whichever the side of the screen the ball is on and have a 1-frame turnaround pose, which is only going to be seen for a fraction of a second. Someone thought it would be a good idea to turn these into smear frames. These are my sleep paralysis demons. The dragon only has one eye for some reason. Bjorn is an eldritch being that the developers didn't even give a name. He's just called Horny because he was a placeholder character back when the game was going to be about Norse mythology. They absolutely did not need to do my boy Jimmy like that, man. Then we get into the gameplay. There's no music other than the iconic Ode to Joy. A lot of the sound effects are placeholder bleeps and bloops that would not be seen in the final game. There are still a few really cool ones though. Top 3 best Peggo sound effects. Number 3. PowerUp_Zen2. Number 2, Spooky. Number 1, PowerUp_Flippers1. Then there's the fact that this prototype actually reveals a lot about the game's design process. Most levels were designed around background first, with pegs and bricks being lazily slapped on there. But when they do try to focus on gameplay, the images aren't there yet, being added in post. The final 5 levels were supposed to be a challenge, so they inverse their process to accommodate.
Alright, it's the last ball. You better make lemonade out of this, Owl Man. Oh my fucking god. He made the most delicious piss-flavored lemonade I've ever drank. Just forget I said that last bit, okay?
This game was truly designed for the casual gamer. There's also a suite of debug features. The ability to edit levels, give yourself any power-up, Spawn balls anywhere on the screen, fire a random ball similar to the demo feature, or, my personal favorite, fire all of those random balls at max speed and speed up the game to 1,000 frames a second. Oh, and a bunch of useless features like checking the frame rate, actual tools for testing the game. Typical of the developers to focus on themselves rather than the player experience in this prototype build labeled version 0.10. But who was it that leaked this version of the game? Well, a random guy on Beta Archive named Dragon, but it was archived on the Internet Archive by a certain Black Lung 82. We will be getting back to him later. Why am I so quiet? Yeah, we're finally on the actual game that is Peggle, the Flash edition. I figure that now is as good a time as any to talk about the Flash versions of these games. The games would be designed for desktop and would cost like $4 or $5 a piece in 2003, but there would be Flash versions which essentially acted as advertisements for the deluxe versions, which were the actual game, and most of the actual versions of the games have been lost to time, but the Flash versions are still available thanks to my saviors at Flashpoint. I love them so much. The actual downloads of this game would always be labeled the deluxe release and would have actual graphics and songs, but they would usually have the same levels. Peggle is a different story. It had entirely unique levels and didn't just give you a trial of the game, it had its own version of the game with its own unique masters, those being Bjorn and Cat Tut. With the Flash versions of these games being essentially advertisements, it was really impressive to see that this advertisement would only show the lamest parts of the game. It was probably because of Flash's limitations, but it was also probably because these ones are the most instantly noticeable, but not affecting. Super Guide and the Pyramid don't affect the ball in any way, unlike the others, so using them as a testing ground was a pretty smart move. Most effective advertisement I've ever played. Granted, I did already own the product. Because the levels are all different, they were actually re-released as the Peggle Knights Spring Pack. Wait, can't talk about this for like 2 years. Okay, fine, I'll talk about the original Peggle. It's kind of boring to talk about. There's not much here. The progression is pretty cool, with the first one being a tutorial, literally. The second one being the most immediately noticeable thing, being a multi-ball, but everyone after that being more and more unique and strange and usually just getting better. The magic hat is the best one. Doug can die.
My wife said to choose between her and magic hat. I looked damn good in front of the judge.
Zen Ball is interesting though, because Zen Ball does not go for the best shot. It goes for the most points. So the meta is usually to point it at the purple peg and let it make minute adjustments to see how many blue pegs and orange pegs it can hit. The purple peg is worth 50 times more, and orange pegs are worth 10 times more, but the final score is factored on how many pegs it hits times the score that it racked up. So if it hits one purple peg and one orange peg, it'll be like, wow, that's so crazy. I made 6,000 points times 2 pegs, that's 12,000. Or it will prioritize the purple peg and 2 blue pegs because that's 5,200 times 3, which is probably more. I can't do the math in my head. I'm kind of distracted. Other than that, it's really boring to talk about the original Peggle. There's really not anything. It is just a pachinko gambling game. But even though it's kind of boring to talk about, it still touched the hearts and minds of everyone who played it because there are 4 Peggle-inspired indie games on the Steam store. I've only looked at Pegglin, but it is still interesting that there are 4 games. Even if they're all terrible, they still show that Peggle made an impact. There is another Peggle game that I haven't talked about yet that came out in 2007, that being Peggle Extreme. I will not be talking about this until later for dramatic effect. Game 34, Venice. This is just top-down zooming. You thought we wouldn't notice.
Our whole universe was in a hot, dense state.
2008. After the release of Peggle, PopCap really did enter its golden years. Game 35. Tetris. Okay, editor, aka me, 1 week in the future. Put the Pepe Sylvia Always Sunny thing in the background here. I cannot find any evidence of this game existing. It's on Wikipedia in 2008, but it doesn't cite a source, and the Tetris it links to is the broad Tetris page, which has nothing. So I checked the Wikipedia list of every Tetris game ever released, and it does have it, with no source. Citation needed. Apparently this game came out on the DS, the PS2, the PS3, the Xbox 360, and the Wii. How? There are only 2 Tetris games in the PlayStation 3, and if there were more, I would know. There is a digital exclusive one from 2011 made exclusively by EA, but that was in 2011. This game supposedly came out in 2008. And while EA did acquire PopCap in 2011, it didn't come out in 2008, and this game shut down in 2014. You can't buy it on the PlayStation Store anymore. The only PS3 footage of the game that does exist doesn't have PopCap anywhere in the opening credits, although there is an original soundtrack that is supposedly from PopCap Tetris. Let's check it out. That's just the PS3 game. The title of this playlist says that it's from 2008 PopCap, but the title of each song says that it comes from the PSN game, which this isn't a PSN game. It was also apparently on Wii and DS and PS2. Okay, maybe the reason it says it's on PS3 is because a very small amount of PS3 models were backwards compatible with PS2. Okay, what's the only PS2 Tetris game? Tetris Worlds. That was not made by PopCap and was not made in 2008. If you want to learn more about Tetris Worlds, you can go click on that video in the top right there, maybe. If you want to see more content like this. And, okay, another PS3 game. What about Puyo Puyo Tetris? That's a family-friendly game? No, it's not. And it was clearly not made by PopCap.
Am I asleep? That doesn't make any sense. That'd mean he's sleeping too. And he and I are definitely not sleeping together.
Okay, I can't do all the research by myself. Surely, other, more dedicated Tetris fans will know something about it. Let's check the Tetris Wiki. It doesn't mention PopCap anywhere. What about the other Tetris Wiki? This time on Fandom. No mention of PopCap. What about the Hard Drop Wiki? About the gameplay of Tetris. Not a single mention. There was one Tetris game that came out in 2008 that didn't have a subtitle. That was Tetris Online, a Japanese flash game, which I don't think I need to understand why that wasn't PopCap. PopCap does not have a Japanese branch and is not a Japanese company. I give up. I'm never using Wikipedia for the rest of my life. They have misled me too many times during the creation of this project. Game 36, Wizard's Pen. Really boring. Game 36, the Wizard's Pen. Okay, so in this game, the wizard had a magic pen. The wizard goes missing, so the pen talks to the player by showing him drawings of objects, which you would assume would be wizard related or possibly hint at his location. That was my first mistake. When I see bars in a medieval game, I say, wow, prison, jail cell, not Walmart shopping cart, not a TV remote, not a cocktail glass. I don't know anything about cocktails, except for the Astropop cocktail from 2008. Aside from its frankly bizarre concept, it is still enjoyable, but I just can't get over the fact that there's a television remote. Jokes aside, it is a pretty enjoyable hidden object game. I just don't care at all. I don't know why this game was preserved on Steam instead of every other PopCap game. Game 37, Peggle Knights. Yeah, I'm not done talking about Peggle. I cannot be stopped. Peggle Knights is the greatest casual game yet created, even if it doesn't technically qualify as a game. It is still debatable whether it's a different game because it's an expansion pack running the same engine and the same characters. Like, is Half-Life Blue Shift its own game? Yes, obviously. Morons. Also, side note, looking at the DLC for Peggle Deluxe on XBLA, it's just, I miss these avatars so much, man. I know that they were around before my time, but I feel like if they were during my time, they would be my jam. Because, like, yeah, Steam has customizable profile avatars, and the Switch has those Nintendo Switch Online independent packs, but nothing will ever compare to the Bjorn hat, man. I need the Bjorn hat in real life. That's the end of that thought. This game is just really fun. Starts off at night. If you'll remember the plot of Peggle Deluxe, you'll know that the Peggle Institute is a college at which they teach the great art of pegging. There are 10 masters who all have different abilities that help them peg better, so it's your job to listen to their lectures and your exams, at which point you get a big trophy. The plot of Peggle Deluxe is focused on the player and their journey of self-improvement, and very little attention was paid to the Peggle Masters. Their dialogue is basically just tutorial. But Peggle Knights seems to be the polar opposite of that. It focuses so much on the Masters that it's unclear that there even is a player in the fiction. Everyone is dreaming, and somehow we're able to see into their dreams. They aren't nightmares or aspirational dreams. This is just a chill slice of life tale. We get to see each of these characters beneath the mask, except for Bjorn, our first character, who wears a mask and has dreams of being a superhero. The stuffy old professor wants to be a Batman knockoff, and all of the level names are just movie puns. The skater is now a scientist who loves people and wants to do the best for all people and gets the Nobel Prize for unspecified genius from Jimmy Lightning. The lobster is so tired of being bullied that the next time he shows up in a public space, he comes there as a weapon of mass destruction. That's just a shooting, man. That's just a terrorist attack. He just did French 9/11. The National Guard is coming in. What the f***? Peggle Knights, ironically, has more levels than Peggle Deluxe, despite being an expansion, because aside from having 10 masters and a bonus world, there's a new master in this one, where we have a new character, Marina. She's different than the other masters because she isn't a master yet. She's just like the player in Peggle Deluxe. She has a new special ability that she wants to use to demonstrate how she can be a Peggle master, and eventually she gets her diploma with the player's help. It's so sweet and wholesome and everything this game encapsulates. It's unclear whether this is a dream or not, but I really hope it isn't because it's just so sweet and fits in with the themes so well. It's an ode to joy with everything the game is about. Like, yeah man, a unicorn can also be Batman. It's so nice. There is another Peggle game. Peggle World of Warcraft Edition. This one is not as sweet. It came out in 2009, but I'm going to not count it as its own game out of spite. Apparently it was born out of a pre-existing contract between Blizzard and PopCap.
There was a huge amount of us who played World of Warcraft.
Right.
We had a guild, and weirdly that mixed with Maxis folks at the time.
Oh, fun.
So it was like PopCap cross Maxis does raiding during Burning Crusade and Lich King, which was hilarious. It was one of my favorite times ever playing games online. But that started working where we were like, we're playing WoW a lot. This could be fun. Hey, we found like someone made this Bejeweled mod for WoW. Like you can play Bejeweled while you're waiting in WoW in their UI. Oh, they ripped off our art. Like actually just used our art. We should probably shut that down. And then it's like, how about we don't shut it down? We pay the guy to actually give him real art and make it nice. And we did. And there was I guess it would be considered an official Bejeweled UI mod inside of World of Warcraft. Like, we went a little overboard there, and then that led us to being like, if we did Bejeweled in there, could we do Peggle in World of Warcraft? And so we actually just hired that guy. His name was Michael Frumwiller. He was still, I think, in school too. And we're just like, hey, we'll just hire you right now if you think you can make Peggle and WoW UI, and he did. That was random, but then that got into other weird extras because we did a thing with Blizzard where we made a special Peggle version, a Warcraft Peggle.
And that is how we have Peggle World of Warcraft Edition, which is silly, and I still love it, kind of. It is still just a demo. There's only 2 masters, those being Bjorn and Splork, but they're all World of Warcraftified. And my favorite part, the skater boy, Jimmy Lightning, is now just a World of Warcraft player using this slang and stuff. In level 2, he's in the background yelling Leroy as a reference to the hilarious 2009 meme.
Police are on the lookout for Leroy Jenkins Jr. of Jacksonville. They now have a first-degree murder warrant out for the 43-year-old.
In the original Peggle games, if you got a cool slide, Jimmy would pop his head up and say, excellent. But in World of Warcraft, he says, Peggle Master is LFG, which means looking for group. Probably. I've never played World of Warcraft. Then, a few months later, Peggle Dual Shot for the Nintendo DS. I'm not done talking about Peggle. This game costs $50 on Amazon. That is surprising to me, because this game is not worth $50. But unlike most old video games, it actually lists PopCap as the manufacturer. So my theory is that they made a ton of copies, shipped them out to Amazon, and then in 2009, Amazon wasn't popular as a way of getting games, so they didn't actually sell all of them. And that's kind of reiterated by the fact that there's only 1 copy left worth $50. The differences between Peggle and Peggle Dual Shot are small and numerous, but they all work together to add up to the overall Peggle vibe. Starting with the title screen. there's all of the Peggle Masters in a tour van working together. I'm not doing a lore analysis. It's just cute. It's just nice. Apparently. Anyway, I think I was at Peggle DualShot. No way of knowing, but we're going back to Peggle DualShot now. First off, the title screen shows all the Peggle Masters in a tour van together. It's just cute. I can't say that. There's also added mechanics in this port. Namely, every time you hit the purple peg 5 times in a level, you get transported from pachinko, where you have control of the balls, to pinball, where the flippers are everything. And also you're collecting the Bejeweled gems, because this was a tie-in with Bejeweled Twist, which also got a DS port around the same time. Aside from that, it's literally the same game. I can't see any differences after half-heartedly skimming the Grapefruit Gods.
Reinfeld looks particularly demonic here. Like, I don't appreciate the way that they lit him like a fucking creepypasta. Actually, you know what? Oh god, this is gonna be misery. Okay, back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Sorry about how many Grapefruit clips are in this video. No one else seems to care about Peggle. I can't imagine why. Although, there are a few extra stages in this one. 10 extra Q levels, named after the port team of Q Entertainment. And they all have some pretty interesting unlock conditions. Mostly it's get gems from the underground mode, but also there is the DS's trial feature where friends on the bus can share games even if they don't have a copy. That does not work anymore. Rest in peace to Q10 from Peggle DualShot. But the really important thing is the music. The DS had kind of a weak sound chip. It did not function well. So each track has a new arrangement and probably a new recording. I can't be sure about that, and I don't care. What's really important is the new song that was used for these Q levels. Simply titled Unknown Music. Okay.
Religion and politics often make some people lose all perspective and give way to ranting and raving and carrying on like emotional children. They either refuse to discuss it with reason or else they prefer argumentum and homily.
Man, you know what this reminds me of? Hyper-violence, such as that in Valve game Orange Box. The game, the Orange Box. That's how I'm segueing into talking about Peggle Extreme. I want you to flash back to 2007. You're a Valve employee working on Half-Life 2 Episode 2, and your boss, definitely Gabe Newell, has just walked in. Hey man, what are you doing? I'm just playing Peggle. You're supposed to be coding, that's what we pay you for, man. Yeah, I know, but Peggle is just so fun, 3, and all of my coworkers are doing it. Okay, maybe we should make our own Peggle so that you guys can actually get some work done. And that's how Peggle Extreme was born. Being shipped with a PC version of the Orange Box, maybe? That's what I can find online everywhere, but it isn't on the back of the box, and I do not want to purchase Orange Box for the PC. However, it did become available to everyone who had a Steam account on September 11th, 2007. And I need to know which one of you sneaky rascals at Valve did that, because that was not an accident. Anyway, it's just another part of Peggle's identity. It shows pure love for Valve, Peggle, video games as an art form, and all in the most wholesome, detached, and empathetic way possible. In an interview that Jason Kapalka and Sukhbir Sidhu gave with PC Gamer, they described the reaction thusly. Jason Kapalka.
I remember we were quite worried when we did the Half-Life thing, because nobody really knew how these Half-Life Orange Box buyers were going to respond to this Peggle thing. It was strange because of some of the comments we'd gotten afterwards. I clearly remember one guy had written, "This is the gayest game I have ever seen, yet I cannot stop playing it."
The difference was, before Peggle Extreme came out, People were saying, this is the gayest game we've ever seen, but they weren't saying, but this is awesome. Afterwards they were saying, this is the gayest game I've ever seen, but it's awesome.
Somehow the association with Half-Life gave hardcore gamers permission to say, oh, it's affiliated with Half-Life. It's got to be cool. It's not gay.
Truly a legendary moment in gaming history. Truly, where would we be without Peggle Extreme? Peggle would only be played by grandmas and women, and not cool gamer bros from the 18 to 35 college demographic. Yeah, looking at the Half-Life theme of the game, it's not actually all that prevalent. There's only 10 stages, 3 of which are Half-Life. But they're just kind of like abstract, except for when Cat Tut gets attacked by a boarding. Then there's the TF2 levels, where Bjorn dual wields miniguns against heavy weapons guy, and Jimmy Lightning is burned alive. There's also one Counter-Strike level. And you cannot convince me that Claude the Lobster did not plant that bomb. The story, of course, is that the Peggle Institute is being raided by all of the Orange Box entities. The way to defeat them is by pegging really hard, obviously. That's just where this was going. And then we get reminded of all the stupid Easter eggs that aren't even just levels, it's just there. G-Man is the sun, like in Gmod. I don't think he's ever made this facial expression before. Bjorn is being eaten by a head crab, and the duel mode sucks. I hate it. But even though this is just a demo for Peggle, it still is the most thoughtful and dedicated demo I've ever played. The wholesome vibes of Peggle, contrasted with the harsh violence, does not detract in any way from the fact that he's a unicorn. Everything is still in this hyper rainbowy world, and that's why it was so hard for typical gamers to accept it, but it truly showed that Peggle was about empathy for everyone. And nowhere is this more thoughtfully realized than in Peggle's great community. Remember Master Hacker BlackLung82? I'm gonna read out some of his tweets now. Posts. They're called posts now. Editing this video took so long. Hi guys, what the is my next move in Chuzzle? Me if I was homophobic and lived in the Mushroom Kingdom. I bet those queers don't even know how to ground pound. Popular Minecraft streamer Dream killed by a drunk driver today. Rest in peace, he will never be forgotten. I wasn't drunk. Every time I step on an ant pile, I violently beat and murder a member of my family just so I can know a fraction of the pain those ants feel. He will be the one serving champagne at my memorial services. Y'all, if I ever hit 407 followers, one of y'all needs to hit me with the truck outside of my home at 562 Pumon Noir Lane, Des Moines, Iowa. Laughing emoji, skull emoji. You know, he also made a mod for Peggle. That, of course, being the Earl Pack, found on Game Banana.
Alright. Me, listening to my Dave Matthews CD in the car. Man, I love Dave Matthews Band. My wife in the passenger seat who just ingested enough tranquilizer to concuss an elephant. When's the Molly gonna hit? Oh my god.
Man, I love Peggle's dedication to fun and empathy. I sure do hope nothing ever changes in that respect in the future. Game 38, Chuzzle Christmas Edition. Game 39, Bejeweled Twist. Oh, I should probably... Game 39, Bejeweled Twist. Bejeweled 2, but infinitely better, because now you twist the gems. That's it. That's the mechanic. You can only twist them clockwise. But I do prefer this because it lets you set up massive chains. In Bejeweled 2, you just have to hope that a 4 will show up somewhere. You can't really control anything unless there is already a match below it at the start, and matches are chosen at random by the top. So being able to just arrange the board is actually a lot more fun, and I prefer it, actually. Hot take. And when I say that you can set up massive chains, I didn't. I'm not smart. Do I look like someone who plays puzzle games in all his spare time? Don't answer that.
I live in a low-income housing environment that goes by the government name of Section 8. Me and a group of my allies control certain areas of this section in order to run our illegitimate business. We possess unregistered firearms, stolen vehicles, mind-altering inhibitors, and only use cash for financial purchases. If anyone would like to settle unfinished altercations, I will be more than happy to release my address. I would like to warn you, I am a very dangerous person, and I regularly disobey the law.
2009. Something big is coming. Plants vs. Zombies. We all knew it was coming. We all know that it's coming. The greatest tower defense game ever made. The only tower defense game I've ever played. Game 41, Bookworm Adventure, fine. It's just that I don't know what to say about Plants vs. Zombies that hasn't been said by a million people before me. It's one of the most well-documented games and still is regularly referenced in memes just out of the blue as a universal experience. People smarter than me have dissected this game so thoroughly, it's impossible to go 5 seconds without seeing Skibidi Toilet versus 999 Conehead Zombies. I'll just talk about the dumb stuff then. At GDC, George Fan gave a talk about the tutorial of Plants vs. Zombies and how it was designed for even the most gaming illiterate people to have a fun time. I watched the whole thing, and the only piece of information I gathered from it was that George does not respect an insane aquarium nearly as much as he ought to. The correct amount of course being infinity, there is no amount of respect that is adequate for Insane Aquarium, our god. I did not compliment that game enough earlier. Then again, that was mostly because I hadn't played it very much, and neither has any Plants vs. Zombies fan. I mean, I feel like the best way to judge a community is by going through the Steam Community Hub, because that's where the people who care so much about the game, they're willing to permanently attach it to their online gaming identity. If you want to get a job in the game industry, this will show up on your background check. So let's check out some guides that people wrote. Why Sunflower is the most likely plant to be a sex offender. Introduction. I have seen some reports on how certain zombies are a sex offender, and I have to plant a report. So this is why Sunflower is most likely a sex offender. Sunflower appears to smile the entire game, which is weird because there's a zombie outbreak, so she's hiding something. Also, there's usually a lot of sunflowers in one place, so they're teaming up to do something even though they don't have arms. But here's where things get real. Most zombies wear a brown coat and tie. So the most natural thing to assume is that they are zombie FBI agents, and Sunflower is on the FBI watch list. That's the reason why the zombies are only coming to your house and not the 1 million other houses around you. Some people may say, if she's really a sex offender, who's the victim? I will tell you. The victim was hard to determine, but I cracked it after 10 seconds of research. I thought the victim had to know her well enough for Sunflower to trick him, and Sunflower is the second plant in the game. The first plant you get is Pea Shooter, so naturally, Sunflower did her dirty work on him with her group of sunflowers. Other sunflowers in the group are Solar Flare and Major Sweetie. Just like how Buckethead Zombie did stuff with his bucket, so why is Pea Shooter fighting his zombie FBI then? Reason. Sunflower forced him to fight them, or she will do it again. Conclusion. Sunflower is a sex offender like Buckethead Zombie, and she should go to court for it. I want justice for Pea Shooter. Never mind, I think we should go check out some other cultural hubs, like Discord, maybe. Maybe let's just check general meme servers. I mean, the game is so ubiquitous at this point. Let's see what they have to say. Oh, this is promising. A TikTok account called pvz.pshooter. Personally, I don't know a lot about TikTok. I don't have it on my phone. My classmates watch it whenever there's a final and they've already finished, but personally, I rewatch all of Conline Critic. The whole series, the whole one. That's not a good joke. Alright, let's boot this up.
Legalize nuclear bombs.
Alright, that's enough. Let's talk about the game. This is a DS port for the Nintendo DS. Oh, I found it at a game store a couple years ago, and I showed it to my dad, who always loved playing PvZ2 on his tablet. And we have 4 DSs, so we just gave him one, and then he had a dedicated Plants vs. Zombies DS. And here's a really cute thing. One day, my sister had a concert, and all the parents arrived, and most of them were just scrolling Facebook. But my dad just brought out his DS and started going off on zombies. That's it. That's the whole story. Look at this picture.
The flowers are blooming, fresh bounty of sun.
What was it talking about? Yeah, the DS version. The DS version has a weak sound chip, so they did different arrangements for each of the tracks. So that's pretty interesting. We could talk about the main game's Xbox 360 port here. It has trees in it. That's it. That's what the Xbox 360 port has. The Xbox 360 port is by far the easiest of all the ports because it has strangely more mechanics to make the game simpler. Not simpler, but much more telegraphed to the player. First, there's the trees, which show when zombies are about to arrive and give the game a visual distinction from its other ports. Not like the DS one needed that though. Second, there's co-op. You can play with another person, which is the same as one player, except you can sabotage your friends by planting a three-peater and wasting all your sun. I don't know why you would do that, but you totally can. You can also stop any zombie with butter just whenever for an indefinite amount of time. There's no way this could possibly be abused. This is just a fun thing for a co-op partner to do, and that's it.
One of the most realistic sounds we have in the game is the butter hitting the zombie's head. So I asked George, the designer of the game, if I could throw butter at his head. So he took off his hat, and I recorded him with his head next to the microphone, just throwing butter at his head over and over again for like 10 minutes or something. So when you hear that in game, you can, oh, that's authentic. That's not library butter hitting head sound. That's like real.
But then again, who talks about PvZ for the adventure mode? That's so easy, most people forget that it exists. I mean, like, sure, there's a cool final boss.
I do not support the transgender community.
Never mind, he's not cool. So back when the pandemic started in early 2020, when I looked like this, my brother started a series called Psyop, and in episode 10, he mentions Plants vs. Zombies, so he's much more knowledgeable about it than me. He 100% of the whole thing. So I'm going to go to his house in Albuquerque and talk to him.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 10 of C'est la pandémie, and today on this momentous occasion, our 10th episode, I will be going over another list of stuff you can do while you're bored at home. Kind of unoriginal, I know, but I'm sort of stuck. Still working out that script for my Teen Wolf review. In direct contrast to my last point, in a society where filling time is the most important thing, why create unnecessary stress just to pass the time? The solution? Sitting on your couch all day, fiddling with your phone and playing video games. Spend as much time as possible consuming other people's media. You don't have to create anything when there's already so much out there to consume, right? Watch Baby Driver, it's good. Some favorite games of mine, two that I highly suggest, are Plants vs. Zombies, free on your phone, and $2 on Steam right now. It's tons of fun. You can finish it in like a day if you focus. Gotta be like my favorite game ever, love it. And secondly, objectively the best game ever created, Sonic Heroes.
Game 41, Bookworm Adventures Deluxe, Volume 2. When I said that Dehumanize was the best casual game ever created, I'll admit, I was a bit overexcited and I had forgotten that this one exists. This is the best one. Sorry. Game 42. Zuma's Revenge is a 2009 tile-matching puzzle video game developed and published by PopCap Games. It was released for Microsoft Windows and Mac OS as a sequel to the earlier 2003 video game Zuma, and it was later ported to the Windows Phone. Compared to its predecessor, Zuma's Revenge features high-definition graphics, new levels, and power-ups, several new features, as well as boss battles. A Nintendo DS version was introduced in February 2011, which features daily challenges, versus mode, and achievements. The physical copy for the Xbox 360 includes 2 bonus titles, Bejeweled 3 and Feeding Frenzy 2. Upon release, the game received mostly positive reviews from critics, with many citing the boss battles and gags as the game's highlights. However, the game did receive minor criticism for its similarity to the previous game. Game 43, Gyromancer. Published by Square Enix, this is a remake of Bejeweled Twist, which reimagines it as a fantasy turn-based RPG. So that's pretty crazy. The combat goes down like this. The enemies attack using attack gems, which show up on the board after the meter fills. The meter will fill each time you take a turn, and if you take a turn without making any matches, called idle twist, then their bar will raise faster. So the one thing I praised about Bejeweled Twist has been severely nerfed. There is so much to talk about with Gyromancer, but I can't bring myself to because school starts in tomorrow.
Let me show you right now before you give it up.
Although there is a fun fact about this game. It was released in 2009 on the expectation that people would be using 2009 computers, which would have trouble running this because it's generally kind of graphically intensive. They wouldn't have trouble per se, but they would definitely not be boasting 4,000 FPS. So they didn't implement a frame rate cap if you had a gooder GPU. The best GPUs during this time would be like, okay, I'm running a puzzle game at 300 frames a second. That's nothing new nowadays, but you may notice that computers have gotten just a bit better over the past 14 years. And the frame rate cap still isn't around. According to this Steam reviewer, his game was running at 4,000 frames a second, and Gyromancer was going to fry his GPU and not Cyberpunk. And if that's true, that's funnier than Earl. 2010. For this year, I want to talk about something I have not really mentioned. Remember the people who are employed at PopCap and the people who want to work at PopCap and what the people at PopCap do. They are poor kids who have stumbled upon unimaginable wealth by pure accident, and also they're gamers. But also remember that PopCap has gotten so much bigger over the past few years that they are literally collaborating with Square Enix, described as the EA of Japan.
Foreshadowing is an...
I'd like to particularly mention that the parties happened every Christmas and every game launch for basically every region. At the Christmas party of Bejeweled 3, they have reached the 1-year anniversary of Plants vs. Zombies and have released the Game of the Year update, which adds achievements. That's it, that's all it adds. It just adds achievements the player can unlock. The only reason this update exists is so that they can add Game of the Year to the title to flex that they did, in fact, get Game of the Year. They had also released Bejeweled 3, the 10-year anniversary of the original Bejeweled, and it is Christmas in Dublin, Ireland. Things got a bit messy. First of all, the fact that this party is in Dublin. The Dublin team, if you'll remember, is in charge of console ports and European localization. European localization may sound like a stupid word for stupid people, but no, European localization means we get PEGI certification instead of ESRB certification. That's like it, that's their entire job, and to make mobile ports. But they're only making ports, and mobile ports take less time to make than games. So they mostly were just hanging out. Their role was entirely redundant half the year, and they were just waiting for more orders to come back from Seattle. This is a group of people who are very close-knit because they spend every day of their lives playing video games together, and also are throwing a party with the unimaginable wealth that they just have lying around. There was reportedly a giant zombie head which would pour tequila that was tinted green into like glasses, into like cocktail glasses. It was ridiculous. And I need a picture to know that the tinted green tequila vomit is real from the zombies from Plants vs. Zombies. I need this image. Anyone, please. I've been looking for so long, but I'd also like to mention a story. So, this is a Dublin party, mainly for the Dublin team, but the founders are all showing up just to be nice, and there's obviously going to be some people who want to see their friends who they've been talking with online as technically employees of the same mega corporation. So there's a lot of visitors. So they have a drinking game to start out the party. This usually happens everywhere. The Irish team has always beat the foreign team, which is people from Seattle, Vancouver, and Shanghai. Always won. Until one man. This man was just interviewed for product lead developer, I think. I'm not quite sure on the details. This is a secondhand story from 13 years ago. But he had just received product lead role, and his interview was like the last day before Christmas break started for working. So he went to the Dublin Christmas party before having met anyone in some desire to prove himself. He beat the Irish team for the very first time at the opening drinking game by slamming 4 pints in 15 seconds, according to Garth. We love Garth. I'll trust him with my life. Things did not go well, as you can imagine. Joe has apparently run around the hotel away from security team, was kicked out, was begged to be let back in because There's nowhere else he can stay in a foreign country on his first day, and he went to his room. I don't know if anyone's watching him, but they apparently did not do a very good job because he tried to sneak in through the women's bathroom. He was not hired. That's the end of the story. Game 44, Bejeweled Blitz. This game was believed to be lost, as it was only released on Facebook Gaming. It was the first game to have the cursed Blitz branding and the only good one. Like I said, believed to be lost on Facebook. But I seem to remember something. So, I dug out my childhood copy of Bejeweled 3 on the Xbox 360. And, wouldn't you believe it, came bundled, pre-installed, with a copy of Bejeweled Blitz Live, an Xbox Live arcade port of Bejeweled Blitz. Instead of using your Facebook friends as a framework, it used your Xbox Live friends, which I can't actually test whether that worked very well. I was 1 year old when Modern Warfare 2 happened. Those are some scars I'll never recover from. The Live features include a weekly scoreboard update. That's about it. But I don't know if that would work, because do people log on to Xbox Live Gold as often as they would on Facebook? I don't know. I don't care. This should have been available for PlayStation 3 as well, because you don't even have to pay for that one. You don't have to pay for PS3's online play. So what is the point of this? What do you think of that? Rest in peace to my PlayStation 3 kings out there. There's a reason for Xbox 360s are in my wall, and not for PlayStation 3s. That's all I'm saying. By the way, I'm adding a new condition. If instead of reaching 10,000 subscribers, we reach $300 car, I will also break my wall. Those are the two conditions. Which one ever happens first? Game 45, Banana Bugs. This is the second game, aside from Tetris, that is truly, definitely 100% lost. I hope. This is one of the games I can't find on Steam, Abandonware, Archive.org, or Flashpoint. Those are the 4 places I checked. There is one download of the game that's available. You can put that on your computer if you want to. That is the most virus thing I have ever seen in my life. There is a Metacritic page, so we know that it did exist at some point, but it has no reviews, so no one cared about it at all. It does have a summary. Hordes of banana-hungry bugs are ravaging the village food supply, and you're the only monkey brave enough to take them on. Shoot ropes to wall off bugs and stop them in their tracks. This easy-to-learn game has tons of upheaval. And, last but not least, there is a single trailer uploaded to YouTube.com. No! Frick. Oh no. Where will these come from? Zombies. Oh, it's fine. This is just Cosmic Bugs 3. Game 46, Zuma Blitz. Game 47, Bejeweled 3. I'd like to start off with a story. I was driving, as one does when they don't have enough money to pay off their car, but this was one of my first time, the first time on the freeway, and I was starting to get sweaty, getting a bit jittery, and I'm like, oh, freeway's probably not a good place to have a panic attack. I'll try some breathing exercises. They didn't work. That is the moral of the story. This is an anti-breathing YouTube channel. Bejeweled 3 has a Zen mode, one of 4 main variations on the game's core concept. It was the 10-year anniversary of Bejeweled 1 after all, and the Zen iteration is the final iteration of the classic mode, which accidentally became the default. There are 4 Zen options in the PC version at least. Breath modulation gives a breath gauge telling you how to box breathe 3 seconds in, hold 3 seconds out, and it actually works for the first time in my life. These breathing exercises for 3rd graders have somehow worked when attached to a normal puzzle game from 2010. So that's crazy. I was not expecting that. That's the point of the story at the beginning, by the way. Then you can turn on ambient sounds in case a seagull screeching in your ears. Comforting for some reason. Then again, I do listen to Fresh Tapes 2 by Patricia Taxon to sleep, so probably can't be trusted on these matters. Then there are the mantras, affirmative bits of affirmation. Then there are the mantras, affirmative bits of information that pop up as you play. I could not play this. Boring nerd explanation coming in. So I cannot turn on the affirmation. Sorry to the one person who cared. It was me. I cared. I like this game. I want to see all the things about this game. Then there are binaural beats, which are waves which play in both ears at slightly different tones, much like the authentic Fresh Tapes 2 by Patricia Taxon experience. Although there is much less variety than I'd like to admit, and it doesn't exactly seem credible that listening to the two sounds will make my pain go away, I think I just have to use drugs for that. It was very clearly a sunk cost feature they didn't want to spend a lot of time on. Most casual gamers are not going to be strapping on $80 headphones, and it's not even in any version other than the PC. But I don't really think this is a casual game per se in the same way Bejeweled 2 definitely was. Mostly because it has an Xbox port, which is not a famously casual console. I mean, there isn't even a mobile port for this one. Well, there technically is, but it's incredibly stripped down and doesn't have the quest at all, which is like the whole point of the game. Also, you know, buy 20 flame gems and 40 board reshuffles for $8 American. The other starting modes in the game are basically the polar opposite of Zen's calmness. Classic is mostly the same as Zen, except the AI, which tracks whether there is a available match, isn't present, much like in the original version of Diamond Mine. So the goal is to always have a match, even if it isn't a good one. And it's very stressful because it's mostly decided by luck. Also, the music is really intense and upbeat, as opposed to, you know, the other one. Lightning is Blitz. It's just Bejeweled Blitz. It's you have 1 minute, get the most score possible. I'm not complaining about it. It's like, it's pretty fun. It's just a bit weird to bundle this with the version of Bejeweled Blitz instead of just incorporating the actual friends mechanic into the game somehow. I don't know. Then, the most important one, Quest. Quest has a story. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. There isn't a story in the game. It's just like, oh, there's a thing. Beating a minigame gives 1/4 of that thing. Wow, that's so crazy. You might expect the manual to say something, but each quest is its own challenge, and the difficulty ramps up closer you get to the end. The fact that a difficulty curve is a selling point is probably not the best part of the game. However, the PC version does have files that are unlocked. So I can just browse through them and, oh, there's the affirmations. They're all just like a plain text notepad file. Or, they're really boring. I no longer apologize to the one person who wanted to see them. Oh, yeah, and also a README file, which has, you know, the plot of the game there. That's the only place you can find it. The lost relics of Bejeweled have been made transparent over time. That's it. That's the story. You are restoring the Bejeweled artifacts by playing Bejeweled. And this was when I realized that every quest minigame has a time element. Whether it's a real-time timer on the bottom, a turn-based limit, or a balancing act. You always have to keep time in mind as the most important aspect of Bejeweled. And I think that's really meaningful because, you know, this is PopCap's 10th anniversary title. It came out 10 years to the day after Diamond Mine. And a not insubstantial amount of the minigames have something to do with the studio's past work. Poker could just be poker, fine, but I choose to believe that it's Foxy Poker reference. That's my choice. Alchemy. There are a lot more video games. Avalanche is just Puzzle from Bejeweled 2, but with randomness. It's just random because there isn't a designated solution, but the solution is the same: to not let any gems rise. There are, of course, a ton more minigames. I will not be analyzing them because I am very tired. But there is one more mode, Diamond Mine. Not the original Diamond Mine, not Gold Rush, but the Bejeweled 3 mode called the Diamond Mine, in which you find references to other PopCap games in much more explicit ways. There's Bjorn's head and Hans P. Froggendorfer from Zuma. That's it, those are the two things, but I still feel like they're at least somewhat emblematic of what this game was trying to do. It's almost definitely that I love this game so much because of nostalgia, and I'm just doing what the Zuma kids do, but it means something. Mainly because this was the last PopCap game developed and published by someone called PopCap. Yeah. You gotta know where we're going next. 2011, nothing is happening. at all. Everyone is so bored because they've already won. They made the most successful tower defense game ever released. They made the most successful Match 3 game. They're done. They've won games. They have so much money. They don't know what to do with it. So people are walking in, playing video games, and walking out. And that's not acceptable because they're creative people who have nothing to spend their creativity on. Flashback to holiday 2009. Similarly, no one has anything to do after releasing Plants vs. Zombies, so they do a game jam. Every employee is split into groups of around 3 or 4 and are given a random word generator and have to make a game based off that concept. One team gets the prompt, unpleasant horse racing through the sky. Over the next 24 hours, they work feverishly, spending the whole night in the office just to finish this random iPad game. And it's good. It's great. Everyone in the office is playing it tomorrow because remember, people are walking in and playing video games and walking out. So in 2011, when no one has anything to do, why don't we publish that unpleasant horse game? We didn't do it earlier because it does not fit with PopCap's family-friendly vision. The solution they came up with was to make a new game studio with blackjack and hookers. Fourth and Battery, founded April 1st, 2011, had to specify in its Twitter post that it was not an April Fool's joke, all while making fun of one of the co-founders. Described as the sandbox for PopCap to work on more experimental and niche titles, it certainly lived up to its name in the 3 months that it existed. Yeah, we're going there. Game 48, Unpleasant Horse. This has been permanently lost to time. It was only available on iOS during 2011, and I'm pretty sure it was taken down really fast. It already had trouble going up, so it's kind of a shame. The reason it had trouble going up? Violence against innocent My Little Ponies when the unpleasant horse jumps on them and throws them into a meat grinder. That is what Unpleasant Horse is about in this PopCap game. So that's why they didn't release it for 2 years, in case you didn't already know what Unpleasant Horse was, which why would you? A couple of days before it came out, an interview also released on the Fourth and Battery website. So I'd want to go look at that just to learn more about, give me a few minutes. What's the deal with the horse anyway? Why is he so unpleasant? Does he have a backstory? Kurt. Much like the honey badger, Unpleasant Horse just doesn't give a shit. It's how he is. It's what he does. You can't try to make Unpleasant Horse anything other than what it wants to be. That just would not be right. While the honey badger might say, plow his nose into an underground bee nest for the larva treat within, the horse too does what he does to survive. This is the most 2011 thing I've ever read.
The honey badger has been referred to by the Guinness Book of World Records as the most fearless animal in all of the animal kingdom. It really doesn't give a shit.
Because the game was taken down, the only footage we have of it is 8-year-olds on iPads from 2011, so it's not great. We also have this guy with 800,000 subscribers. I don't know how.
Hold on, dude, this game's freaking weird. Who makes this? Okay, and then we're gonna go up here, then we're gonna go get that bird, we're gonna do some of that. Am I supposed to no, I only get, oh yeah, I guess you do get points for jumping on the clouds.
I'm sorry, now that I think of it, this footage is not the right vibe. It's not passing the vibe check. Alexa, play Stupid Horse by 100 Gex.
Buddy, watch the cloud turn purple. Here, get that bad boy. I mean, that good boy. Am I the bad boy? Probably. Okay, get him.
Actually, hold on. Alexa, we're gonna hit copy strike. Stop. Alright. Game 49, Candy Train. This one's actually a lot less interesting. From what I can tell from this one 8-year-old iPad Let's Play it's the infinite Bioshock minigame. Again. I can't say I'm too mad though because this game wasn't actually a game. It was a job interview.
Jeff Green and I started a label called Fourth and Battery that was really, the intention of that was to give people in the game studio and outside of the game studio, honestly, an opportunity to flex and to try out new skills, and also for us to retain employees for longer at a time when people were starting to get a little burned out on working on the 8th version of Bejeweled or whatever. A woman who's working in sort of the DRM wrapper department, Sophia, who, was really just trying to break into the game studio, wasn't having any luck doing that for whatever reason. And she got an opportunity through Fourth and Battery to work on Candy Train and bring it to iPhone. And she did it with the help of her boyfriend at the time, who's now her husband. And they, this is a 2-person team. They worked on it in their spare time, launched the game, and she proved that she was a game developer and she was accepted into the game studio immediately.
That's what I love about PopCap, is that they're always just willing to do stuff for other people, because that's what their game has always been about. And that's when we come to Game 50. Allied Star Police. The first thing to know about Allied Star Police is that it was mostly designed by a 10-year-old. The 10-year-old Owen Reynard was diagnosed with leukemia, and he always wanted to be a game developer. So he contacted the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Make-A-Wish contacted PopCap, and that was how this game came into being. Owen Reynard's condition is unknown, which makes sense because gamers aren't the most respectful bunch, and I don't want to pry into something so personal. And that was the last game PopCap ever made as PopCap. So that's fun, because you'll remember, in July of 2011, PopCap was purchased by EA for $650 million. The first thing that EA did after purchasing PopCap was fire hundreds of people. They fired every redundant employee, which included 50 from PopCap Seattle, the entire HR department from everywhere, great job EA, and all of PopCap Dublin, the whole thing. No more zombie head tequilas anymore. Apparently Dublin wasn't even told about it before the news broke online, and they walked into school being like, oh, did I just say school? Frick, I gotta go to school tomorrow. Apparently, PopCap Dublin was not informed of this until they checked the internet the morning before they went to work.
The way it happened was a bit unfortunate because the news broke online in the morning before any of us knew. And so we walked into the studio in the morning and people said, oh, did you see what's online? And I was like, what? And they're like, oh, major changes, major layoffs in PopCap. I was like, what's happening? That can't be us, though. I mean, it can't be us that we make, like, we do this and we do that. And our project is like, so, I mean, I was completely in denial. And then the message came around, it's like, oh, all hands meeting. And we were like, oh, okay.
Great job, EA. Friendly and helpful as always. You'll remember that PopCap's work culture was not a work culture. You work because you're a creative person who wants to make things. You can't just go into work and play video games all the time. I mean, you're probably not going to do well. Everyone's going to hate you, but like, you can do it, I suppose. They're just chill guys. But EA doesn't care about work-life balance. They want money. So, okay, in case you don't know how most video game company acquisitions work, there is typically a 1 to 2 year growth period after the initial buyout where if certain growth periods are met, more money is infused into the shares. PopCap was never a publicly traded company. Shares were always held by the founders and the employees, with employees getting shares depending on how much time they had been there. Apparently, if you had been there for less than 6 months, you didn't get anything. If you'd been there for like most of the time it existed, you got...
Oh, that's nice. I mean, are you personally making over 100,000 from the acquisition?
Yes.
Over 200,000?
Yes.
Over 300,000?
Yes.
Over 500,000?
Yes.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
No, I walked out of that acquisition with about $700,000.
Different people had different shares in the company.
Okay.
So no, it was not evenly distributed. Some newer people who were there less than 6 months got nothing from it because you needed 6 months to vest any shares. So I think that there was some discontent from people who started, and that happened. And but then there were plenty of us who'd been there a while. Like I did fine with it.
Are we talking over 50,000?
Yes.
Over 100,000?
Yes.
Over 200,000?
No.
Okay.
I was able to pay off student loans and have a down payment on a house. So that felt great.
Yeah.
The founders each got like 100 million. So a few of the more money-oriented and new employees wanted to meet the acquisition goal, which if they had hit a certain amount of growth, the total acquisition would have been $1.3 billion. It was only half of that in the end, but if they had met every goal, that's what it would have been. And that's what these developers were trying to hit. So they made Solitaire Blitz. Game 51 Solitaire Blitz. It's so fucking bad, man. It just sucks. It was exclusively released for Facebook Gaming. Game 52, Plants vs. Zombies 2. You probably forgot about this one. Everyone did. PvZ2 perhaps had the most troubled development of any PopCap game ever made. It started development around 2010, 2011, but it ended up not being finished until late 2013. Most of it not being their fault, but I mean, just some of it, just a little bit would be their fault. First of all, the founders. George Fan, he's a creative person. He wants to do his own projects, and he was already fired in the initial round of layoffs. Rich Werner, original artist, doesn't want anything to do with it. Laura Shigihara was a contractor. She never worked for PopCap, she just worked on PvZ. Everyone from the original team is gone. They don't care about Plants vs. Zombies anymore because they want to do their own things. It makes sense that none of them want to be seen as a one-hit wonder. Laura Shigihara went on to make CSGO music kits, and I did purchase CSGO and the music kit just for this joke. Because the development team didn't have anything for the originals, they said, let's just make this its own game with its own identity, which I think is completely fair. I don't think that sequels need to be especially repetitive, but they decided to make it mobile only, and that was not fun. That was not a cool thing to do. It was still going to be a premium game where you buy the game, you spend money on the game, and then you have the game. The suits at EA were not pleased by this. When the acquisition came through, they found the producer and said, hey man, what's going on with PvZ2? He said, well, we're going to make it a game that you can buy. And so they fired him immediately. That's not a joke.
Make the game more like existing free-to-play games. And I put so much equity into the proposal that the team had spent so much time exploring and supporting. And I'm like, I'm the producer on the team. I'm the product owner. I'm going to stand by my team. And I said, I don't think it's possible. I'm standing by our proposal. We've tried. We don't think this is a good idea. And what we recommended was, if you want to make a free-to-play PvZ, start from scratch. Let us make this premium game that bridges the gap between just pay once and play the whole game. But there's opportunities to sell stuff into the game. The business team can start to get used to that. We can experiment, use it as a testing ground for things, or whatever, but we won't totally destroy the legacy of the game by doing that. It's like a stepping stone.
Yeah.
And start now on a free-to-play version of PvZ that's built free-to-play from the ground up, so that you're not breaking anything.
Right.
And I just stuck to that. I was like, I think this is the best idea, but I'm just a producer. But this is this is what I think you should do, and this is what I'm going to stand behind. And then, what happened shortly after that was I was removed from the project. A new producer that was more amenable to the direction that was being asked for was put into my place, and then shortly after that, I was sort of asked to leave the company.
So that's great. Love that. Good job, EA. We all love you. The new producer, who, granted, was technically a PopCap employee, had only worked on one game before. That was Zuma Blitz. The Zuma Facebook game. That's fun. Here's an excerpt from her LinkedIn. Reversed game trajectory from significantly below fiscal revenue targets to plus $3 million. Oh wow, she designed the integrated advertising system. Fun. I really don't want to talk about Plants vs. Zombies 2 gameplay. There are loot boxes, obviously. You just have to have those in 2013 for this children's mobile game that is free and never asks any confirmation when you go to make a purchase. So that's legal and fine for people to do. The game wasn't released when it came out. It only had 2 worlds. The game wasn't actually finished until around 2015 because they kept on having new updates with more plot. If that sounds fun to you, it shouldn't. Listen, that has only ever worked for one game, Hitman. It's never worked for any other game. And Hitman wasn't exactly better for it. And then there's the legacy content. The Zen Garden is here. Isn't this peaceful? A massive ticking clock telling you to spend money right next to it. That's so peaceful. I love the Zen Garden. I'm feeling so zen right now.
Hello, I come to you from the editing bay as an incredibly ill person, ready to talk to you more about Plants vs. Zombies 2, the 2013 mobile video game. Developed by PopCap Games and published by Electronic Arts on iOS and Android. I feel like, as editing this, that I was much more dismissive and cruel towards PvZ2 than it probably deserves, because it was still developed by PopCap and had a lot of people put a lot of time and effort into it. It sucks that the monetization system was so aggressive, but there is still a game there that is lovingly crafted and wonderfully designed. And the thing that really made me have a change of heart about this was finding out about PvZ2's rich and vibrant community who are still keeping the game alive through mods and such. I didn't actually know that there were mods for mobile apps, but apparently PvZ2 was just that cracked. The specific mod that I want to talk about is Plants vs. Zombies 2 Reflourished, which takes away basically all the monetization elements and lets us see what the actual game is. I'm running it on an Android emulator, so that's kind of cool. The reason I feel that Reflourished is very necessary for PvZ2 to be a game is that it is actually designed by people, and even if it wasn't the original like PopCap team, it does let us see what the PopCap team might have actually made. And the most important thing is that the Reflourished mod removes all the monetization elements. So in the original game on mobile, you had to spend $2 a piece to unlock Snowpea and Squash, two of the most beloved characters from PvZ1. A lot of people would call this stupid and terrible, including me, but in Reflourished, they add 10 levels to the end of Ancient Egypt after the final boss to let you unlock those characters in a structured format and use them later in the game. Which I thought was just a really interesting and cool way to turn the game into a real game. Some other things. Then there's the way that gems have been repurposed. Previously, you bought gems with real money to buy in-game stuff like more plants and upgrade the Zen Garden and pinatas. Pinatas, the loot box system, have been completely removed. PvZ2 launched without a leveling system for plants, but they eventually added them to get people to spend more money on gems, because the way that you would upgrade plants is by purchasing loot boxes, and those loot boxes would have random seeds packets, and then you would have enough of those packets to level up one of your plants to deal more damage, have a faster recharge time and stuff. Reflourished removes that completely because it wasn't in the initial release of PvZ2 on mobile, and makes the game either way easier if you spend money or, you know, not fun at all. And at the end of levels where you would usually get pinatas, you instead get the mystery gift box, which can carry more gems or costumes, and that's really cool, I thought. Now that pinatas are removed, gems are still used in the Zen Garden to speed up plants, but you can't actually buy sprouts anymore with real money, only gems. And plants that would have costed money in the original now cost gems, which are unlocked by killing zombies. So I'm assuming that those are the specific plants that would have been incorporated into the main game the same way that Snowpea and Squash were, or they just couldn't do that for some reason, I don't know. I haven't actually played past Ancient Egypt, but from what I've heard, they've also made some sweeping balance changes that go beyond the leveling system being removed. Like, apparently Primal Sunflower was just like an upgraded version of Basic Sunflower and has been nerfed by making them cost more. They added 2 brand new worlds after the end of the game. I have not gotten to the end of the game because this game is absolutely massive. It's like, I forgot to mention this, it's like 12 hours long, because in vanilla, each world has 25 levels that are going to be about 2 minutes long. Yeah, the Reflourished mod is really cool and lets me see what PvZ2 would have been if it wasn't for EA's meddling and destruction of this wonderful art by adding loot boxes. The quality of the games is not really the purpose of this video. It's more about the legacy they left behind, so I should probably not include this, but I just didn't want to be mean because PvZ2's development team really did try, and it's important to respect them. Even if the final product was terrible, it wasn't their fault, and we need to show what the game would have been if it was good.
And I'm sure the developers thought the same way, because 52 of them, after they finished Plants vs. Zombies 2, went on to another title, the final title. Game 53.
I'd say I was speechless, but I have one more thing to announce. Coming this year, Peggle 2!
Cruelty Squad is a game made by one person and one person only out of a pure reflection of his worldview, that of nihilism. Every frame of Cruelty Squad is filled with disdain for everyone and everything around it. And there is less venom in the entirety of that game than in this one frame from Peggle 2. That's not a joke. First of all, the advertising. The game initially was a timed Xbox One exclusive before releasing on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 4 shortly afterwards. Not on PC or mobile, the two consoles that Peggle was built for. This is the only frame on the Xbox 360 storefront. There's no trailer for what the game is. There's just this frame. What is anyone who wants to buy this game going to do? Unless the developers didn't want people to buy the game because they wanted to piss off the suits at EA. I mean, let's look at the things that differentiate it from its predecessor. There are 7 masters, 2 of which come from the original. Bjorn is the first world and the tutorial world. Great, already off to a great start. What is that? That's the first frame of the game next to the PopCap logo. Bjorn in Peggle and Peggle Knights was a ethereal being. He was a horse. We can all agree. He was a unicorn. But here's the thing, he was a unicorn who was weightless, ethereal, and wholesome. He was a wholesome unicorn. And the first frame we see of him is his terribly unkempt fur. Why have they done this? I've already said it like 4 times. In the original, he was a placeholder for Thor's goats, who ended up just being the game, because the game was never about Norse mythology. It was about video games being fun. Why not have the most pure symbol for joy, a unicorn, and rainbows? No, that's not allowed in Peggle 2. The one thing about him, in Peggle Knights, he was a massive horse, and he could just curl up on a couch and read a book. How's he reading a book? He has hooves and no fingers to turn the pages with. It doesn't matter, because it's a wholesome, fun game. In this game, he trots along. His teeth are horrible. His horn was just like a joke. I didn't even notice that it was there. But, you know, in this game, it's used as the source of his power, the source of the pegs. This is what he looks like when he has his super guide activated. He is a professor at the Peggle Institute who has dreams of being a superhero. He just wants to help people. And here he is, farting all of the time, just at random during dialogue. He just farts. Why did they do this? It was to spite. It was out of spite. But even though Bjorn is this disgusting creature, there is still love for the original Peggle, in the Peggle Institute at least. Cinderbottom has a fountain. Pooh and Claude are in stained glass. Renfield is literally just a hedge. And even later in the game, Jimmy Lightning skates in the background. The Peggle Knights moon is just there, copy and pasted. Cat Tut is just in a cloud. He survived the Vortigaunt's attack. He's fine, guys. Don't worry about it. You may say, Anders, this is a family game for children, and children do be laughing. But no, this is not a family game, because the second guy is just the Big Lebowski.
Yeah, right, but let me explain something about the rug.
Do you like sex, Mr. Lebowski?
Not a very family film, I would say. Here is his official trailer on the PopCap YouTube channel.
Way out west, there was this master I want to tell you about, a Peggle master by the name of Jeffrey. But you can call him his Jeffness, or the Jeffer, or El Jefferino.
Here is the opening of The Big Lebowski.
Way out west, there was this fella I want to tell you about. Fella by the name of Jeff Lebowski.
More evidence. He loves bowling. That's like his only thing, is bowling.
Are those Eagles? Because I really hate the Eagles, man.
Come on, I had a rough night and I hate the fucking Eagles, man.
That's just like your opinion, man. Okay.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like, your opinion, man.
Hey, just remember to be careful. There's a beverage here.
Hey, careful, man. There's a beverage here.
Most of all, he's drinking a suspicious white liquid the whole time. That, of course, being half and half mixed with vodka.
God's plan.
You can't put that in a kid's game, but like, come on. Look at it. Like, okay, the final level for Jeffrey is a troll face. Not euphemistically, not like a joke. This is what the level looks like.
Oh, God. It's a troll face! All right, well, it was a good stream, but I'm going to call it quits for today.
Peggle Master 3, Berg. This one's interesting, because he's one of the few guys we have concept art of. Most of these artists have gone offline and retired, because they're well-adjusted individuals. Matt Holmberg still has his website up and available, where he displays all his art. There is a furry section, which we do have this image of Kitty. That's fine. But unfortunately, Sexy Cat Girl, March 15th, 2003, is lost forever. No longer archived. This is so sad. Can we get 50 likes?
I hope it's romantic, go right,
Berg's concept art was a fun Sasquatch with a flower in his hair who loved ballerina. That's cute, that's fun. I wonder what his extreme fever will be. Bjorn was like head bobbing. Jeffrey was just dancing along. I was Bergen.
This here's a pool of water made of genuine H2O. Now, if that was actually water, you wouldn't be having to tell me that it's water. That is piss.
Master 4, Norman. Norman is a below average size gnome, and he's so tired of being bullied, he locks himself away in his room forever to dedicate himself to becoming the perfect being by being tall and powerful and a tyrant. He does want to be a tyrant. They said it in the trailer.
Norman, imperious, impatient, but with the heart of a loving and affectionate tyrant.
He is ultra-militaristic. His song is the 1812 Overture. His extreme fear pose is, a salute, and he's German, because his name is the Ubervolt. And I'm starting to recognize a pattern here. I don't think family-friendly, casual family puzzle game, Peggle 2, needed to make its fourth master a Nazi-coded character. I don't think that was necessary of them to do unless they wanted to piss off EA. And last but not least, we have Luna. Grapefruit, can you take this one for me, man?
Tomorrow's my birthday. It feels like I've been 6 years old forever. You know what we should make one of the main characters of our Peggle game? A dead child.
She literally does a creepypasta thing. She jump scares the player. And they still did have to work under EA's restrictions. They had to keep it under their noses that they were making a spike game. But if the ESRB wasn't rating on an X and they needed that E rating, she would have gone bend round, bloody eyes and everything. You know that. You know that would happen. Then there's the DLC. A fairy who is very small and very poorly animated and weirdly passive-aggressive to the player.
I know, it makes no sense. My advice is accept it and move on. All right, fair enough.
And then, last and certainly least, we have Jimmy Lightning. He's the second character to return because of his fan-favorite status as a funny skater guy who just wanted to make the world a better place. He had dreams of becoming a Nobel Prize winner. Let's see what his character was. He's a monster energy-consuming, meth-addicted trucker whose teeth are terrible. This is the same thing with Bjorn. A weightless, ethereal being has been brought down to Earth out of spite, and now he has gross, realistic hamster teeth, and not funny teeth. Funny haha. Do I even need to mention the costumes? I will mention the costumes. Bjorn has a unpleasant horse costume, which turns him into a My Little Pony. The ones that got shoved into a meat grinder. Berg? That's just a babyfur. You cannot convince me of anything other than that. Norman. Is just cross-dressing, and not in the fun way.
I do not support the transgender community.
Luna is 6-year-old, so they spared her of having fetish gear, but that's the right call. Good job, Pop. But what about Jeffrey?
But when does this game get fucking good?
I've said it before, I'll say it again. Peggle was a game made of pure spite, biting the hands that fed them a while ago enough food to live forever, so they don't even have to deal with him anymore, and they just ran away immediately afterwards. That analogy got away from me a little bit, but that's just what happened. You can't deny it. They were just putting needless stuff in to waste EA's resources just because. Okay, I'm not well-versed in music theory enough to describe this last one, but I'm not the only person who watches grapefruit videos to the point where I'm neglecting physical needs. Patty, can you take this one away from me? I have not slept since July.
There's this one Let's Play video of Peggle 2 that I've watched 5 times, Grapefruit's one. But there's one line that sticks out to me every time I rewatch this.
That was not only in time with the music, that was in key with the music. Man, that is unusual.
Now, I've watched this video all the way through so many times, and I have an ear for this kind of thing. If the sound effects were ever out of key at any point in this video, I would have noticed by now. Peggle 2's OST is constantly operating in that floaty Disney score modal mixture feel. Surely if the peg hitting SFX were just an ascending scale, they'd be out of key almost half the time. So, I proceeded to look up some no-commentary footage of Peggle 2 for research, and yes, the peg-hitting sound effects adaptively tuned to the soundtrack's key. Bjorn's theme begins in the key of G major, but midway through this shot, the song borrows a little from A major too, and the scale adjusts accordingly. And even more noticeably, when things get a little intense, the pegs emit a minor scale. So, whose idea was this? Why is this the most overproduced casual game ever made? I don't know, but I'm happy they committed to it. Thanks for—
Wow. Thanks, Patty. I will now return to listening to repeatedly until Tech Dog releases this fall. And after 2013, PopCap stopped making games. Like, they just stopped. Here's a full list of every game that was released by PopCap, Seattle, not Vancouver, Seattle, since Peggle 2. Peggle Blast, which doesn't have credits, so it is actually possible it's a different studio. Bejeweled Stars, again, no credits, and last game they've ever made, Plants vs. Zombies Heroes. You'll never guess what I'm about to say. Now, not only are all three of these mobile freemium games, but they're not really games, are they? There's no new IPs here. There's no gameplay systems. And while it's sad that PopCap died, there's really no more fitting a fate to befall a wholesome company under postmodern neoliberal capitalism. It's very hard to find a happy ending, and all this aside from the fact that, Peggle 2 developers got paid tons of cash and then never worked at EA again. Or it's just the fact that EA bought a studio just for its IP and then alienated everyone from it. But I keep on remembering that PopCap is nowhere to be found. Name a big studio with multiple branches which has that laid-back culture of new IPs every game. 53 games in 10 years. I love video games more than anything, but I have to thank PopCap for letting me share them with anyone else. Gateway games are, stupid, but also very important to everything. And I feel like archiving all of this is how I pay back the favor to PopCap, and especially John Beachy. I think he would agree with me on this.
I think we've got to get to a different world, one where wealth doesn't exist.
I want to look at the final pure essence of joy that came from PopCap by looking at their YouTube channel. Their very first upload when I was just 220 days old, simply titled Peggle Nights Slideshow in 240p. And I've come back to that now. Alexa, what time is it?
Time is 10:16 p.m.
And school starts in 9 hours. So long. Great to set up. We've got a random shelf which I can grab video games from, and a microphone with a dirty sock on it. Mini fridge in the corner of the room that had to be unplugged so I could set a wooden plank on top of it to balance Funko Pops on, and brace with a kickstand to set my phone on, which is why it's so wildly deviating. I don't actually have a stand. This is a claustrophobia corner. The microphone actually leads into, we've got ourselves a PC with Audacity running. I drank a dangerous amount of Mountain Dew Baja Blast. Like, there's still 6 cans on my desk. I have not picked them up.